I think shifting a little bit into your role now as a CISO at Paychex, what, there's been several articles, and I know you're a prolific kind of writer there, that you focus a lot on being as proactive as possible rather than reactive, because I think information security is such a dynamic field. And so do you think that same approach applies to kind of all aspects of life as from an advice perspective, or is it really focused on the professional side?
Well, being proactive is an essential attribute for a CISO. You certainly wouldn't want to be one step behind your attackers and cleaning up messes when you could prevent them from occurring in the first place. But the same can really be said for almost any area of life. I've learned, for instance, that it's far easier to anticipate my wife's needs and be proactive in doing things that make her happy than it is to react to the situation when she's unhappy. So it definitely is applicable in all areas of life.
One thing I think I saw an interview with you before where they talked about in the past, software development has been almost built in isolation from security. Do you see kind of the new cybersecurity professional being almost this hybrid that can cross across both boundaries in a sense? Or what would you suggest for a student today?
Yeah, and it's development would be one area. Actually, that's one of the hottest areas in cybersecurity is application security or product security. And it helps to be a software developer in order to move into that space because it's difficult to secure the software development process if you haven't developed software. So one of the places that we're hiring application security folks from is from our development groups because they already know how to they know the software development life cycle in that process. So if you're and you can look at other areas of IT and it's very similar. There's if you're if you're a DevOps engineer or a cloud engineer, there's a desperate shortage of cloud security engineers and DevOps security engineers. So any of those areas, as long as you have some interest in or passion for security, it's a good stepping stone to move into security is to pick up those skills first.
One thing that comes up a lot with students that we talk to is that, a lot of them don't necessarily come from name brand schools. And especially as you said, they might not know, Paychex is a huge company to them. How do you kind of get connected in somewhere like that? And so, I guess, how do you suggest for students that are kind of interested in the cyber field, but again, don't really have those networks built, or don't come from those schools where there are direct pipelines into, those types of cyber firms? How do you go about doing that today?
Yeah, my first piece of advice would be to seek out an internship or a cooperative role prior to graduation. So having some real world experience will help you stand out from the competition. On top of that, a lot of employers, including Paychex, leverage interns and cooperatives as a primary pipeline for full-time hires. So my second piece of advice would be to pursue industry certifications. So certifications, they demonstrate mastery of a body of knowledge that's typically aligned with real world cybersecurity work. So if you have a certification and your competition doesn't, then you hold an advantage over your competition. And finally, I think if you're having trouble landing a cybersecurity job, get some real world experience by volunteering to help like a nonprofit organization with their cybersecurity needs. That'll give you some great experience, help out a worthy cause, and get a good reference.
Do you think, and again, it's kind of making that first transition is always really important. I think something like 23% of new hires fail in their first year because they don't, kind of take that bull with the horns. What would you suggest for a student in their first 6 months? When you've looked at new workers coming in and throughout your career, what have been the most successful ones, or what things have they done in those first 6 months that have really set them up for success later in their careers?
Yeah. I hope this advice doesn't sound too trite, but I'd say work your butt off. And specifically what I mean is go above and beyond, what's expected. Learn as much as you can about the organization you've joined. Spend some time building internal relationships. You can be the most brilliant security engineer on the planet, but if you don't align your efforts with organizational goals, you're not able to influence others or foster internal partnerships. and you do just kind of enough to get by, you'll end up doing a job, not building a career.
Can you maybe give a little bit more deeper perspective on doing a job versus building a career?
Yeah, I mean, that's where something like getting to know being curious and getting to know how your organization operates, for instance, you'll end up building skills that are not directly related to what you do in your day-to-day work, but they'll be critical in your success in building relationships internally and persuading others to do the right thing from a cybersecurity perspective. So those types of skills are things that are transferable and that help you move up the chain in terms of moving from your individual contributor role into a management or leadership role. So I'd start gathering those skills or building those skills as soon as you start.
Yeah, I think maybe it's even back to your idea of the curiosity, right? Where exploring different areas of the business, right? So it means not to stay in, say, your cyber group, but occasionally going over to, say, the finance or accounting or the marketing, and just kind of seeing what they're working on, right? To get a sense of, okay, this is how the organization performs. And then you can almost interpret that back into, okay, how does cyber need to start supporting those types of the pieces of the organization as well?
Yeah, exactly. And you can't start early enough on that. So you can, of course, it's important to build your cyber skills as well, but those are the pieces that are going to set you apart later when you're looking at moving up into a team lead role or a manager role. The folks above you are going to look at, do they understand what we do as an organization? Do they have relationships with the people they're going to have to work with every day? And if you're the greatest, data loss prevention engineer on the planet and you know nothing about the other parts of the business and what it does, you're going to be stuck in the trenches.